Coming up, we have even more information about the holidays at Universal Orlando to share. A special ticket offer for Florida residents is now out, and something you might actually want to think about if you don't already have an annual pass. And then we are going to also talk about our final house rankings for Halloween Horror Nights 30. That is all coming up on this week's episode of the DIS Unplugged Universal Edition. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the DIS Unplugged Universal Edition. I am your host, Craig Williams, and today I am joined alongside by my co-host, Ryno.
Hello.
And thank you for being here, Ryno. We have a fantastic episode for you. Like I already explained in the cold open, we have more details about the holidays to talk about. We have that special ticket offer to talk about for Florida residents only. So I know it's going to be boring for some of you out there, but it's worth mentioning, obviously. Otherwise, we wouldn't be mentioning it at all. And then we are going to go over our final Halloween Horror Nights rankings for HHN 30. And I'm sure some of the, our final feelings on the event overall, because we didn't really have time to share that with our Hallow Scream episode we did on Halloween. It feels really great doing a show not being covered, having my face covered in bandages. I will say that much. But yeah, we have a lot to talk about, and it's going to be fun, especially with the Halloween Horror Nights list, because we are going to look at what we had on our hype list versus what it ended up being. And of course, Ryno's able to also throw in what he felt after that first night, because he was able to make a good list after that first night of the event, whereas I wasn't able to do so. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Stay tuned for that. But before we get started, I need to remind you this is brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel. If you like our content, you want to support us, please consider booking your next vacation to Universal Orlando through Dreams Unlimited Travel, or even buying an annual pass through Dreams Unlimited Travel. It costs you no extra money, and you get the help of an awesome Dreams Unlimited travel agent. So head over to dreamsunlimitedtravel.com today for a free, no obligation quote. Okay, Ryno, I think we have to save Halloween Horror Nights for last, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of people out there who are probably really, really sick of Halloween Horror Nights and saying, hey, we've already moved on to Christmas. Yeah, why are you still bringing up Halloween? But, I mean, we have to. We have to. It's just the way it all fell this year.
Get over it.
Yeah, it's not a lot we can do about it, but I will say I am definitely missing Halloween Horror Nights. I kind of had that feeling right towards the end of the event that I was burned out on it, and now that it's gone, like, if only I had one more night, just one.
It's funny because I went to get in my car yesterday, and it was like 10 minutes to Universal Studios Florida. And I was like, why does it think I'm going to Universal Studios? And then I was like, because I got into the, if you keep going, your phone starts to figure out where you're going, and then starts giving you suggested directions. And I was like, it has repeatedly this week tried to give me directions to go back for Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah. And so I did go over to Universal one of these days since the event has ended. And the weirdest part for me was it was right around the same time I would go in for HHN, but I found myself leisurely strolling through City Walk and not rushing to get inside the park for Stay and Scream. It was all very, very weird. It felt like the right motions, but just not the same way that I'm used to doing it. So I will miss it greatly, but we do have to roll on to the Christmas celebrations. And a couple weeks back, Ryno and I did share what is coming to Universal Orlando for the holiday time. Of course, the return of Universal's holiday parade featuring Macy's. You have Grinchmas and the Grinchmas Holiday Spectacular, and all the excellent decorations in Seuss Landing, excellent decorations in all the parks and in the hotels and such. And then, of course, the return of all of the Christmas activities inside the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, both Diagon Alley and Hogsmeade, as well as the Magic of Christmas at Hogwarts Castle projection show happening nightly. But then Universal even announced more that was happening during the holiday season at Universal Orlando. Some of the announcements were things that, we knew were coming anyways. Then one special return announcement. And of course, actually, you know what? Why am I just beating around the bush on it when we can actually just jump right into it? That was, I don't know why I was trying to hype it up for like the third time this episode.
They're already listening.
I already hooked you, but I'm trying to hook you again on this one. So let's just kick this all off again. For if you don't remember, the holidays kick off on November 13th, and they are running through January 2nd. Hopefully, since I will be out of town on the 13th, hopefully we will be able to have some holiday coverage as quickly as possible after it kicks off. But yeah, it's coming very, very quickly. It's almost upon us. And one of the things that I think we'll probably see open up at least right on that day, maybe a little bit earlier, is that Universal has confirmed that there will be another holiday tribute store, which, completely expected at this point. Now, I think we have officially hit the point with the tribute stores that we know that the holiday tribute store will run all through the holiday season, and then they will tear it down and get ready for the Mardi Gras one. So then the question is, do they now put in two? Yeah. Well, you have the summertime one, but since Mardi Gras this year is running through April, I think, are they just going to start a new tribute store in like May and let it run all the way through the summer? They're going to try to sneak in too. But I think we're now officially at the point that unless they are working on the next tribute store, there will always be a time where there's a tribute store in that spot. And I'm okay with it.
I hope so. I really enjoy it. It's themed shopping at its best. And it gets me.
It really is.
Every time.
Yeah, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I loved the holiday tribute store last year. It was, it wasn't over the top. It just filled you with a little bit of holiday spirit, and it compacted all of the Christmas merchandise into one location, which I always appreciate it. I don't like.
I can't even remember the tribute store. Oh, it had the squirrel in it, right?
It had Earl the Squirrel. Yeah. And Kylie has a lot of Earl the Squirrel merchandise because of it. It wasn't like overly themed to the Grinch, but they had all the Grinch decorations in there. They had a lot of just the regular Universal Christmas stuff in there as well, too. I like when they put it all in one space versus like, okay, you have to go to this store and then you have to go to that store and you have to go to that store. Just put it all in one spot, and like the tribute store, and it works best for me.
Yeah. I heard a rumor that the Halloween store, the All Hallows store, that they were going to turn it into a spooky Christmas store. Oh, I don't know if that's true. Apparently, a team member said that to somebody that was in there, that they said that this year it was going to be like the little nod to Halloween Horror Nights, but also still be like Christmas stuff. And I was like, I hope that's true, because I would love to see what they've got in store for that then.
Pun intended.
Oh, didn't even see what I did there.
Yeah, I am happy with the All Hallows Eve store staying, in terms of like, obviously they're not going to promote Halloween stuff the entire year round, but if they can find a way to kind of keep that but have Christmas in it, maybe use that as the preview store for Halloween Horror Nights, even though it's like in the complete opposite park. Like, I'm sure they could find a way to keep that store alive, because it's a great space, beautiful spot. And Lost Continent, what else is happening there? So you might as well have something relevant. And I get it, mythos. Everyone loves their mythos, and Poseidon will return again one day. But come on. But in terms of the holiday tribute store, of course, there will be 4 incredibly immersive rooms. I wouldn't be surprised if, one of the rooms will be Earl the Squirrel style related again. But beyond that, we'll have to wait and see what the themes are. It's always 3 rooms of shopping, the hallway in between, which for the holiday one this year, I think they're doing caricatures, kind of like with Halloween Horror Nights. They did the old-timey. They turned you into an old-timey photo for an obscene
For
amount of money.
$200.
Yeah, and this time it's spend an obscene amount of money to have your caricature hanging inside the hallway in the tribute store. So that's happening, and then the final themed room is where they'll always have the sweets and treats. So that's, it's an easy formula, but it's one that I feel like actually works really well. The holiday tree hunt happening at Universal Orlando throughout the resort there with it, and there will be 15 brilliantly designed trees that will be placed around different locations. You can purchase a brochure to find out where all those locations are, of course, in the holiday tribute store, as well as other merchandise locations in the theme parks and Universal City Walk. I don't have the pricing on that. I'm sure it's, probably, I don't know how much they charged. Did they ever charge for any of these? Because before it was free, and then you just got the free candy at the end with like the scarecrow hunt and stuff. So
yeah, I don't remember. I know they did the scarecrow thing again this year, but I'm like, I don't think it cost money.
Yeah, it did. Well, this one is specifically for that, because you get an exclusive holiday tree hunt ornament to commemorate the experience.
Oh, well, then that makes sense.
Yeah, you're paying for the ornament, but that's going to be an option. Also want to point out that this year returning is Universal's holiday tour, which very, very fun. And what happens on the Universal Holiday Tour? Well, you have not the option, but you have the opportunity to meet the Grinch in Seuss Landing while enjoying a hot cocoa bar. You get to see an after-hours showing of The Magic of Christmas at Hogwarts Castle. You also have reserved viewing for Universal's Holiday Parade featuring Macy's. You have reserved seating for Grinchmas Holiday Spectacular, and after the show's done, you get to hang out with the Who's from Whoville for an exclusive onstage Q&A session. You have
uncomfortable.
What's that?
Uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable is what this said to me. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I'll be honest. The only time we really had to interact directly with the Who's was when we did the we had one media event where they stuck us in with the Who's, and I felt trapped. But then we also had we also, when we did the Grinchmas breakfast, seems like that's completely gone. Especially now when you can do the after hours holiday tour and you can have a cocoa bar with the Grinch. But that opportunity, we had to talk to the Who's. It was like, what do I say to you? What do I say?
I know. Yeah.
What's happening with your nose?
No, thank you. No, thank you. Yeah.
And you also get a meet and greet with Santa, and of course you receive a free digital download of your photo with Santa with this. And then also I mentioned that holiday tree hunt. You get your holiday tree hunt brochure included in the price of Universal's holiday tour. And this is an add-on experience. Yeah. What?
What do you mean brochure?
It's a pamphlet that tells you where all the trees are, but they call it a brochure.
Oh, so you get the map for free.
Yes.
Okay.
You get the map.
But
you get your treasure map for free.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm trying to speak in Universal lingo. You get your treasure map for free.
Yeah.
If you pay for the tour, that starts at $69. I have all that info up here. Yeah, prices start from $69.99 per person. The dates for Universal's holiday tour begin November 2nd and run on select nights only through January 3rd. However, it says that's weird. It says select dates November 22nd through January 3rd. But then when I go to click on the calendar, I can start booking dates as early as the 21st of November. And so basically,
maybe because it's a nighttime thing, maybe it starts that night before.
I have no idea. Maybe it's just they made a mistake in terms of entering the dates in here or something. But in terms of what I'm looking at the calendar, you can get your holiday tour on those dates from November 21st through the 28th. There's tours available every single night. And then there's more dates on December 5th then December 12th through the 16th, then December 18th, and then after that, it is every single day up through January 2nd.
Wait, so when do the holiday stuff start at Universal?
November 13th. So then the tour starts the following week.
Okay, so then the tour starts the following week. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So I'm going to attempt.
That's next Saturday. That's crazy.
Yeah. And it looks like in terms of the pricing for the tour, it starts at $69.99, but the most expensive it gets is from the 22nd through the 30th of December. It is $79.99. So it's only a $10 jump up in price for that. And I mean, the reserve seating is definitely a good thing to have. I'm not sure where the reserve viewing is for the holiday parade, but I assume it's in at least a decent spot. You know, I like that Macy's spot so you can see the tree get lit up and such. But any spot that you know you don't have to fight crowds for is always a good spot. And with Grinchmas, it could be actually a very important thing to have this year because there has been official confirmation now that Grinchmas isn't going to be happening. The Holiday Spectacular isn't going to be happening in a soundstage. It's actually taking over the Blue Man Group Theater. So I'm not sure what the capacity is in there. But I've been in there to see shows before, but I feel like you can shove more people into the bleachers in the soundstage. So,
oh, you think so?
I feel like it. I mean, it's just at best the Blue Man Group Theater is like it's basically like the size of a decently large movie theater, like back in the day with flat seating, like flat floor seating.
But they weren't. Then it's not bleachers; they're seats, right? In the old theater, it was like metal seats, but they were seats where the thing went up and down.
Yeah, they went up and down, right? but they were basically you're shoved in.
I was hoping the Blue Man Group switch would be like, okay, well now at least the seats a little bit bigger because the seats were at the bleacher place were so tiny. Like, I always felt very claustrophobic. If you were in the middle, you were stuck there and your knees were hitting the person in front of you.
Sorry, I was trying to look up real quick how many. Okay, there was 1,000 seats inside the Blue Man Group Theater. So, assuming that that's still the same amount of seats that they'll have in there for it, yeah, I feel like 1,000 seats is definitely that's a large number. I don't know how many though were in Grinchmas previous to that in terms of the bleacher risers, but as you have pointed out too, it's actual seats, but you were cramped in there. They were not the size of seats for the average American adult at all. No.
Yeah, so I'm at least looking forward to a new venue, whether it's bigger or smaller. But it'll be interesting to see how they get people from the park into there, because it's not in. It's technically it's closer to, it's part of Universal Studios Florida, not Islands of Adventure. But even then, it's not really in the park, but it has that little sideway where you could make it part of the park. But again, you'd be making it part of Studios, not part of Islands of Adventure.
Yeah. So there still is a way to get into that area from Studios. They've had points in time where there's two different crossover points that Universal can use to go from Islands of Adventure to Universal Studios Florida. One is closer to the Blue Man Group Theater and past Hard Rock and such, and then you could also technically cross over, even though it'd be a little bit weirder, back the other the further direction, like if you were going into the sound stages, like how you used to for Grinchmas. So it all works in terms of how you get in. My question is, what entrance do you go into the theater to get in? Is there like a side entrance? Because if you go into the front of the theater, that whole area is like, I feel like, how do you secure that area? So I don't. The questions that I'm sure they have already figured out, and we could probably walk over and understand and say, oh, that's how they're going to do it. But it's not really important for us. But it's still very interesting. And in other things returning, Mannheim Steamroller will be performing on the following nights, December 4th, 5th, 11th, and 12th. They play on the Universal Music Plaza stage. And it's, of course, they play the hits of Mannheim Steamroller that you hear on the radio. But if it's the same show that it's been every other year that they've been here, they then have the 30 to 40 minute interlude right in the middle where they play the entire soundtrack for the Grinchmas Holiday Spectacular. And it's cool to see it done live, but it can be a lot of Grinchmas if you go see that show earlier in the day, and then you're like, oh, I want to see Mannheim Steamroller, and then you hear the exact same show played again without the entire spectacle of the stage. Like, granted, you do see the live performers, and they have special characters come out to help perform the songs as well too, but the Mannheim Steamroller shows, I watch it. I've watched it multiple times throughout the years. It's not a must do for me. It's nice that it's included in with your admission that night if you happen to be there, but I wouldn't say like pack up the kids. We're coming down to Universal Studios Florida on the 4th or 5th because we have to see that Mannheim Steamroller. Absolutely not with that. But I'm not going to really go over the holiday food offerings because it's, we'll definitely handle that as we get closer, not as we get closer to the holidays, but as we get into the holidays, we'll try to do some reviews of some of the holiday food and beverage. So, but just know that it is going to be an option there. But yeah, I'm ready for the holidays here to hit Universal Orlando. So it's nice that it's basically going to be back to their pre-pandemic events in terms of what they're doing with the holiday season. So loop-de-loo, dickory dock.
I was trying to think of something Whoville weirdo thing to say, but I couldn't do it.
You just got to pull out the Grinch gloves. I mean, it doesn't play well for audio, but would have played well for video.
I should have got him out of the car in our break.
Yeah. I mean, should have, could have, would have. Should have, could have, would have. But okay, we're going to, unless you have anything else to share about the holiday season at Universal, I think we're going to move on to the next quick news story before we get to the Halloween Horror Nights talk. And that is that Universal is offering a special ticket for Florida residents. Buy a day, get a second day free with limited blockout dates now through February 4th, 2022. And it's basically as simple as that. If you buy one of these special tickets, you can use it on any 2 days now through February 4th, 2022 with very limited blockout dates. And the ticket can only be purchased now through December 16th. So if you're a Florida resident, you don't have a lot of time for this. And you can get that at universalorlando.com by using a promo code from a specially marked cup of Coca-Cola at participating Wendy's restaurants. So,
Wendy's.
Yeah, this feels like an old-fashioned promotion back in the day with it's get your McDonald's or Burger King cups and get that special code on it, and you'll get something for discounted. So
it must work.
Oh, I have no doubt that it works well, and it's a great promotion, and it benefits all parties. It gets people into Wendy's who might not go regularly. It gets people into theme parks that they might not be interested in visiting during other times. But I don't have the blackout dates in front of me, so I can't really help in terms of that. I'm sure that most of the blackout dates for it are probably over Christmas week specifically. I feel like that's a no-brainer for when they don't need extra people in the parks, but it's a great offer if you're a Florida resident and something worth checking out, in my opinion. So I don't have a need for it because I have an annual pass, but if you don't have an annual pass, you want to check out what Universal has to offer, it's a good way. It's a really good way. But there's nothing really else for Ryno to say on that. It's a ticket.
No.
Yeah. And I don't even think your Dreams Unlimited travel agent can help you with it. So
I do like chicken nuggets.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know what? If anyone out there wants one of the, any Florida residents out there who wants the ticket offer but does not want their spicy chicken nuggets, go ahead. Let me know. I mean, granted, it comes on the cup of Coca-Cola.
We're still waiting on that chicken sandwich, so we're not getting any.
Forever waiting on the chicken sandwich. And then I also realized, too, that it comes on the specially marked cups of Coca-Cola. So I don't, I mean, maybe a value meal. If you don't want everything in your value meal.
4 for $4.
Yeah. I don't know if this offer would come for the 4 for $4. I feel like
maybe on the biggie box.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely the biggie box. That biggie box and value meals, but not that 4 for $4. That's too good of a value. They're giving stuff away for free at that point.
Yeah.
Well,
I want Wendy's.
This episode has been sponsored
right now.
This episode has been sponsored to you by Wendy's. They've not paid us anything to speak about them, but I mean, if we haven't sold you on Wendy's at this point, who will? Who will? Get your French fries, dip it in your Frosty, have a good time. But okay, let's move on to our final discussion about Halloween Horror Nights 30. As you know, Ryno and I went quite a bit during the entire event run, and we have a lot of opinions on it, including our final house opinions. I'm kind of leaving scare zones and such out of this because, you know, I feel like, and Ryno, you can back me up on this one if you feel ever so inclined to, with the scare zones. Yeah, there's no doubt that lights, camera, action was the standout scare zone. I think because it brought in so much from the past years of the event with, you know, some of the physical representations of other scare zones they've had, having Eddie. Every now and then Jack would pop in with Eddie and they would get to be together, brothers up on the stage, and then bringing to life some of the in the actual street, having scare actors from the past scare zones as well being in there. This was truly a standout scare zone in like all the years that I've visited. This was your greatest hits of Halloween Horror Nights. And then after that, everything else was just, to me, was just kind of there. Like, not that they were bad characters or anything in them. Like, I loved walking around Seek and Destroy, but it was just more of the same as you went through that entire area. And Gorewood Forest, loved walking through there, but it was more of the same. And the Halloween Horror Nights 30, the 30 years, 30 fear scare zone, it was just kind of there. And the only one I truly did not enjoy was Crypt TV, because I did not make it through all of those episodes. So it was just, to me, it was a glorified photo op and nothing more than that.
You know, it's harder. I feel like in the last couple of years, it seems like more and more more and more of the scare zones have to get off the ground and be on these platforms. I mean, especially this last little bit, but I like a good high concept, so I like Seek and Destroy in terms of like, I liked the controller part of it, but it's like there have been scare zones there I've enjoyed more, like Vamp 85. I loved because they did like the dance and stuff like that. Even honestly, even the Zombieland thing wasn't even that bad. The one year. So I like a higher concept idea that goes over there though, and so I was just like, I don't know that there were any scare zones this year that are like gonna remember this for years to come. You know, that'll stand like the way like Trick or Treat did, or the one that was the year after Trick or Treat that was still utilizing all those pumpkins in the trees again. I can't remember what it was, but it stayed with me so much I can remember its name. I didn't necessarily dislike any of them.
Yeah,
I liked the Crypt TV more than the Rob Zombie one that was there year before.
Yeah, no, I that's kind of how I am. They're just, most of them weren't memorable. The only one that was truly memorable for me was Haction, just because it was greatest hits. And then I'll remember Gorewood Forest as well too, because, you know, it's my first experience with the Terra Queen and such. But even then, it was very muted. I feel like if you already were a huge fan of the Terra Queen and Terra Cruentus and that, then it was probably like a great walk down memory lane. But for someone experience it for the first time, it was a little bit underwhelming in terms of the actual design. But you only have so much room in that small strip between Hollywood and Kid Zone in the Central Park area that I get it. It's a lot more difficult. But when you do have stuff that's like stand out in that area, like Trick or Treat, it sets a big precedent for anything. Precedent, that is, not president. Precedent for everything that follows after. And then I kind of feel the same way about the shows. I had, after like focusing solely on the houses for the first part of the event, then I started focusing on the scare zones, and towards the event coming to an end, I started seeing the shows more often, and I was able to take in the Marathon of Mayhem Carnage Factory about 3 more times. And it, for me, it was the one day when I wanted the perfect shot of it. I waited 45 minutes for that perfect shot, and that was ridiculously too long. But as a show that you could walk up to a minute before it started and have a spot to just stand and drink your beer and try to be entertained for 10 minutes. I liked it for that, but I couldn't remember what happened in the show from the first night that we saw it in September till the next time I experienced it in October. And I know by December, I will not remember anything that happened in this show. Like vividly.
Jack laughs a lot.
Yeah, I will remember that it was Jack and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Universal Monsters and Hill House, but I won't remember it vividly like I did the original Marathon of Mayhem. And as for Halloween Nightmare Fuel, I did go back and I only gave that show one more chance just because every time I attempted to see the show, it was walk up 15 minutes before and get told that it was already full and come back at least 45 minutes before the next show. And that's valuable time that you're just standing around waiting for the show. So I was only able to experience it one more time. And I think I liked it a lot more then. I think we were around people who were just way too into it the first time we watched it. That kind of like, I was more focused on like how annoyed I was with them versus what was happening in the show itself. So it was the performers in it. I stand by it. They are spectacular. And I hope Universal keeps this group. I know some of it was like they used a special, I can't remember their names, but someone pointed out, I think in the Universal Facebook group, that it was like, it's like Fuel Ladies or something like that was the group that they brought in with like all the fire effects and stuff. So however they brought together this group to make this show, I hope that they keep exploring it in the future in a different location, because Fear Factor is officially closed. It has been wiped off the website. It is gone. But I know it's terms of the show. I think a lot of it just comes down to the music. Like I don't care for Rob Zombie. I don't care for Billie Eilish. I didn't care for a lot of the music in the show. So it was, I was impressed by the visuals, but not the overall atmosphere of the show.
Yeah. I'm with you. It's a time eater, unfortunately, because I'm there and I feel like I can never get to the houses enough, and you have only so much time. So it was always just like too busy for me to go back to the show. And plus not only that, it's just, I don't want to be like crammed in that stadium for the amount of time. Like I don't want to be that close to people. I'm not that comfortable. I was never been that comfortable even before everything. So I'm just like, I don't know. I think I agree with you. Everybody in the show is super talented, and I think that there's no question that it's like, wow, it was like a spectacle to see. And the same with the Lagoon show is that like I don't think it was as cohesive as the 2019 one was. And 2019 had the cool theme of like being the VHS that was rewinding and playing over and over again. And like, and this one was a little more back to those roots of that like terror and carnage and heavy metal sort of stuff that Halloween Horror Nights started with. And that's great for an anniversary year. And I hope they continue to do the show again and again and again. And so I look forward to see whatever it is next year. And I hope they do have another form of entertainment that can eat crowds as well. Without that stadium, though, I don't really know where they're going to end up putting it.
Yeah,
if they can. So
it's tough because the Animal Actors show is not not big enough for it. It's not
Yeah.
a big enough. It's not a big enough theater, and then they also can't as easily adapt that space to it. And it's right in the park. There's not really backstage areas to it because it butts up on Springfield, and like literally they were using that the actual stadium itself for Stay and Scream this year. So it's like there's I don't know what happens in terms of this. I don't know if it's like the setting up for a 2-park or just saying goodbye to entertainment like this in the future and sticking with only fountain shows and smaller stage shows like in front of Central Park like they used to do. But yeah, it's but even then you can't really do a show right in front of Central Park if you have a lagoon show happening in the background too. So they've got stuff to figure out with this, and I'm sure they have a full plan, and I'm sure there's already people talking about what the future is for all of it. But that is something I'm not clued in on yet. I have not started paying attention or focusing on that yet. But let's focus now on the houses themselves and go over our final rankings with all of it. And Ryno, do we want to start out by saying what our pre-hype list was for the event?
Yeah.
So do you want to start with yours?
Sure. So for the pre-event ranking, before we'd ever stepped into the park, I had it as follows. I'm going to go from the bottom to the top.
Yes.
So at the bottom, I have Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Haunting of Hill House, Bride of Frankenstein, Case Files Unearthed, HHN Icons, Revenge of the Tooth Fairy, Welcome to Scary, Puppet Theater, Wicked Growth, and Beetlejuice as the number one.
Yeah.
That was my before I had ever attended the event.
And my list before we attended the event was Revenge of the Tooth Fairy, Universal Monsters, The Bride of Frankenstein Lives, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Puppet Theater, Captive Audience, Halloween Horror Nights Icons, Captured, Beetlejuice, Wicked Growth, Realm of the Pumpkin, Welcome to Scary, Horror in the Heartland, Case Files Unearthed, Legendary Truth, and The Haunting of Hill House at number 1. And then Ryno, you did the list for the first night after we attended the event because you went 2 nights that weekend. What was your list after the first night of the event?
After the first night of the event, this is from bottom to the top again. I had Welcome to Scary at the bottom because I remember just nothing happened in the house when we went through and being like, I don't understand. And I feel like we got no scares. So I had Welcome to Scary, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Case Files, Puppet Theater, Tooth Fairy, Bride of Frankenstein, Hill House, Halloween Horror Nights Icons, Beetlejuice, and then Wicked Growth was at the top. That was after the first night. My list is, again, drastically different after that. So
okay, well, we need to move on then to our actual final lists. So do you want to go first, or do we want to kind of do this in tandem together?
Just do it back and forth.
Okay. What would well, we can actually, I know number 10, we were the exact
both have
same.
at the worst, yeah.
Yeah, so what is that? What again? At our number?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I feel like it's not really I don't mean it in a comment on anybody involved in it or anything like that. It just felt like a safe in a year of all the houses that they have. Because honestly, other than this house, I thought every house was great. Like I enjoyed going through every house. I just never really enjoyed going through Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't really like the movie to begin with. I mean, I understand it in terms of it being a horror, an iconic horror film and all of that sort of stuff, and I've seen different versions of it throughout the years and all that stuff. But it just, for me, it felt like a safe bet, which I guess they needed. It didn't feel, I don't know. It felt like irrelevant. Like it didn't, I don't know if there was supposed to be a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. I know there is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie that supposedly is coming out. That's like a sequel straight to the original one. But like, I didn't really understand the choice, the reason, the rhyme, or the reason to have it. I would have rathered something like a Scream House or a Nightmare on Elm Street, something. Leatherface just doesn't do it for me, so I didn't care for it.
And I think it all comes down to they wanted that iconic character, and they decided not to go with Michael Myers with it, and I think that would have been the safe bet to go with Michael Myers
or somebody like Jason, where I feel like I know we've had like a Freddy versus Jason house, but I don't know that I've ever been here and there's been like a Friday the 13th house. No. Like that would have been fun.
Just
easy. I feel like
just the Freddy versus Jason, and with that house, like I not a huge fan of the movie, not at all. And in terms of that house, like I wasn't. It seemed like it shouldn't work, but because they gave a little bit of time to Nightmare on Elm Street, a little time to Friday the 13th, and then it became this battle against both of them with you stuck in the middle, I feel like it worked because of that. And then with something like with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's just like it's relying solely on that icon, that Leatherface, that I do think it's an awesome character, but the aesthetic of the house just does not work with me, and I'm not afraid of chainsaws anymore. HHN has desensitized me to chainsaws forever at this point. So it's just you can always hear the motor starting. Yeah.
So you like know it's coming, and I guess you do. Well, I did go with a friend who is afraid of chainsaws, and even then, he said, and he was afraid of everything. Like he screamed in every house, like terrified. And he even said that was my least favorite, not even because it was scary. It just was my least favorite. And like, not to say that the characters didn't give it their all or anything, because at the end there was that one part where there's like 1, 2, 3, and they like come out, and that part always stressed me out. And like, and going into it during Stay and Scream when you have to walk in and your eyes can't adjust fast enough, that's a nightmare. Yeah. But just ultimately, the house doesn't do it for me. Yeah. That's all. I don't love it.
And
I don't love it.
I think we'll say it now, so that way we don't have to say it with every single thing that we go through here. This is not a reflection on any of the performers, whether it's in the shows, whether it's in the scare zones, in the houses. This is just what we actually enjoyed, and the ranking of how we enjoyed it. It comes down to timing. It comes down to what we aesthetically just find pleasing. What works with our personalities. And I know there are probably nights where there are performers who aren't giving it their all, but honestly, I don't usually ever feel like that. I feel like staffing is the bigger issue. That there's times where you go through a house and it's like there's no one in there, and not that it's not you're timing it wrong. It's like you can see there's literally no one there. So that's obviously a problem. But when the performers are there, I've never felt like, oh, they're not giving it their all, and they're not given a choice of what houses they're put in. So they're put where they are, and they make the best out of it. And yeah, I want to make sure we make that clear. This is not an insult to any of the performers, any of the people who worked on the houses. It's just literally we are two people on the internet saying some of these are at the bottom of our list, where there are people out there who also probably left the event saying this was my favorite thing I experienced. So just remember that there's always opposite sides to the story with it. But at number 9, I had Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. What was yours?
That's at my number 9.
Oh,
yeah. I did struggle, because I will say Tooth Fairy and Bride of Frankenstein are down here, having done them so many times, but then like finally being like, okay, these compared to what else we have this year. But ultimately, it's hard, because I do like I like every house from here on out. Yeah. But Tooth Fairy, I love that it was like the storybook and going through it and everything like that, and an original idea, and like I thought it was a good house. It's just it's just after you've done it a bunch of times, it does feel a little like it doesn't really hit the same, whereas other houses I do a million times and be scared every time.
So with me in particular, with Tooth Fairy, why it ended up towards the bottom, I think that the entrance to the house, once you get to where you see the storybook brought to life in large dimensions, it was such an epic start to that house. For me, though, why it ended up low on the list was ultimately when it was last year's event, and it was just Bride of Frankenstein and Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. I preferred Revenge of the Tooth Fairy, and I remember saying back then, like, oh, this house could go up against any original house in terms of like the look of it. It was so cool. But I wasn't prepared for how good of a job they did with the original houses this year. Mm-hmm. Like I was not prepared at all. So it ended up like legitimately, not even counting the amount of times I've done Tooth Fairy last year and this year, it was just I think a lot of the other original houses had a better design to them, and it was stuff that I found more pleasing and more like I had more repeatability in the other ones. And so it happened to be one of those things. Like I loved it last year, and it was great last year when it only had one other house to go up against. But then when you put it up against the rest, it just, to me, it was not as strong as it could have been. So in a different year versus some of the originals, it could easily have been a top 5 house, but this was a strong year for original houses. But
100%. No, I think repeatability is a good point there.
But I know this is where we diverge our paths, because I believe you put Bride of Frankenstein as your...
Is my number 8.
Yeah. Well, my number 8, this was the biggest shock of all. I had this one on my hype list as number 2. So the thing I thought would be the second best ended up third from the bottom, and that's Case Files Unearthed. Legendary Truth.
I mean, I don't want to say too much about it because mine's a little higher up, but I do feel like one that I was like, oh, this is such a cool concept. Ultimately, maybe I wanted it to deliver more than it did, but it feels like, wait, hold on. Do I have it in the same spot? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 10, 9, 8. I actually have it just a little bit higher than I did for my hype list, I guess. I remember thinking the concept was great, but it was like, I felt like every time I walked through, I just wanted it to hit just a little bit better than it ever actually did. Does that make sense?
And it does make sense. And that's exactly my issue with it. Based on what I knew the house was going to be about before the event, I was like, this is everything I want it to be. A noir story just brought to life with these different stories being told in each section. And it will make me more aware of what Legendary Truth is and Boris Schuster. But this house, I feel like in terms, and I think this is where it comes in terms of staffing. I cannot tell you the amount of times I did this house, not just like in the first hour of the event, but in the middle of the night of the event. And I would walk through in the last 2 scenes, I wouldn't see a single person in there. Like starting at the room where the telephone operator is hunched over there through the final ending of it. Not a single performer. So, and that was like the case. Like there was the one themed room where you were going in, where you're basically in the basement and you see the staircase up, and there is only one scare actor in that entire room. And I just felt like the house was designed like to tell the story that it was telling. They made a beautiful house. It was so heavily detailed, heavily themed. I wish I would have done Unmasking the Horror, so I could have just spent time walking around and taking in every single detail in that house. But as in terms of delivering any type of scares, which I feel like that's what you need. Like that's what you need to do in a house like that. You need to at least have some scare moments. I think they kind of squandered a lot of it. Just never. I never had a single run through that truly clicked. I had the first 2 was the closest that I ever came, because the first time we went through that house on the media night, it was pretty bad. And then we gave it one more shot. They let us go back in for a second round. They added some performers. Even better. It was a lot better. And at that point, I was like, okay, so I feel like between that first run through and this one, I kind of have a good idea of the house. But I never had that run through that I went through and I was like, okay, I get everything that they're going for, and this always works. I can say that about every other house, though. I got that at least once in every other house.
Yeah, it's like what you said. There was a lot of set pieces that felt like there should have been another, like one more character in it, or one more area for somebody to be able to scare you or something. But I did ultimately, like I said, there's such a dense story here that I was like, this would be great if Universal could release some sort of graphic novel or something that accompanied this, because I would love to read this actual story we're walking through to completely get it. Because I don't understand the end. I didn't understand how the guy from 1990, who's like, or 91, who's like exploring the story. I don't get why in the end he is dead.
Yeah.
I don't understand why his like the universe is coming out of his head. Like I feel like that part was always lost on me. Like I was missing something, but I do love that it's like they recreated that. They took a window that it was an anniversary house in that aspect too. They took this window from Universal Studios Florida and they were like, okay, now you're going to be inside of Boris Schuster's office. So one of my favorite details was when you look behind him, when you first are in the office, you look through the window and you're looking out at the streets of Universal. I think that was like a beautiful detail. And then being able to cross and go into the Kitty Cat Club, which then is another just glowing sign pointing at a nothing on the street, but they made these like into a livable area. I just think that for me is like just so incredible. But
well,
but I did have Bride of Frankenstein was my next one up. So that Bride of Frankenstein was my number 8.
Yeah, and that was my number 7. So I was going to say, talk to me about Bride of Frankenstein, and then I can roll in right after.
We had what was probably the worst walkthrough of Bride of Frankenstein, which was on one of our second. I would say it was our second to last. Yeah. At the end, toward the end of it was in that last week of the event. And it was literally like there was absolutely no characters in the entire thing. Totally. And I was like embarrassed to go through with our friends because I was like, it was like one of the first ones we did. And I was like, I feel like this is way better than this should have been. But then I don't know, like going through it as many times as I did, like I do still really love that it is this, again, they took an IP, but then made an original story with it. And it's their IP, which I think is even better, you know? And so I think they did a good job. I hope there's another Monsters House next year. I don't want it to be Frankenstein related. I would love to see a Wolfman or something, you know, a Creature from the Black Lagoon, something else, or a celebration of all the monsters again, like they did with Universal Monsters. But I would love it if this just became a thing where they kept leaning into these characters. Maybe
I will say I am ready for a Wolfman house. Dracula Untold was 2014, I want to say, somewhere back there. And granted, that was based on that movie, not on Dracula itself. But I feel like vampires get brought up so much throughout Halloween Horror Nights that it's still a little bit more fresh, where something like Wolfman, I think, besides Werewolf in London, you can't even count those together. That is full blown werewolves transforming.
Yeah, that's like a wolf
versus
monster,
a half man, half wolf. So I would love to see werewolf. I'd love to see, or Wolfman. Sorry, I would love to see Creature from the Black Lagoon. I just don't know how you bring that to life. That's a tough one for a full house.
They had the Scary Tales. The Scary Tales area, remember they had that one section that was underwater. And I'm And
you could walk on the Rita, and Creature did come out of the water. It's so
it would be aggressive.
Yeah.
They'd probably have to put too much effort into what they would want to do for something like that.
And the reason I have mine at 7 on the list, and it was on the lower side, ended up not being because it was around last year. It was just with this house in particular, I looked at it versus would I rather do Universal Monsters in 2019 or would I rather do Bride of Frankenstein Lives? And Universal Monsters was the highlight house for me that year. That it's kind of, it's hard. It definitely, as a sequel to the house, it did not live up. And I don't even want to say that. I had high expectations on it, that it was very hard to match those same expectations. It was a great house, but I think that, coming so quickly after the first Universal Monsters house, that probably gave it a little bit of a disadvantage. And had they waited to do this house next year, I probably would have been like, oh yeah, it's been a couple of years since we've had Universal Monsters. That was so great. But, it's just how it all plays out sometime. So what was your number 7 then?
The Case Files.
Oh, I didn't realize yours was just one above mine.
It's another area where the two are very close, but ultimately it's like, I guess I put Case Files low because I had gone through it so many times too, because it was always the one with the lesser weight, which I was happy about. But my but you said Bride of Frankenstein was your number 7, right?
Yes.
So we're on to a new number.
We're on to number 6.
I have Beetlejuice as number 6.
Well,
Um, what?
Wait, well, I mean that's a low placement compared to your number one on your hype list.
I know. I didn't dislike Beetlejuice. I thought it was a great interpretation of the movie. I don't know that I even went through it as many times as I would have wanted. But there are some things that I felt like I was a little not disappointed with, but like I do wish that we had seen Catherine O'Hara's character in the house. And it's not just because it was Catherine O'Hara. I just think that like they had a scare point where Lydia would pop out and she'd say, I myself am strange and unusual. And I'm like, why wouldn't you have the mom, Mrs. Deeds, why wouldn't she come out and do the script where she was like, oh, I will lose my mind and take you all with me? Like, why wouldn't you have that scene where she's screaming at the, at least that one part? Because they had Otho, but I only saw Otho like during our media event. I never saw him again, like ever.
See, that's the funny part about Otho. I don't remember him during the media event. And then I saw him, I don't think I saw him at all again in September. And then it was like the last couple times I went in October that I saw him more and more. And I was like, wow, I didn't even realize he was in the house. I was always wondering why they didn't fill something in that blank space that was right there. But I agree. Like Delia she is enough of an iconic character in that movie that it should have been better represented with her.
Yeah. I also feel like Adam is a little underrepresented. Like there weren't I mean, he's always there, but he's never real. It's always he was never like really a character. I don't think I can't even be positive he was a character in the house at all.
I'm okay
at any point.
I wouldn't also be half surprised. And this is not a statement about any recent things with Alec Baldwin, but he is such a private person. Like he has been known for like yelling at paparazzi and stuff for taking his photos and stuff. I would not be surprised if he doesn't have something built in to every movie he does that his likeness from it cannot be used.
Like Harrison Ford does that.
Yeah. So I would not be surprised if they were off limits as using a character trying to appear as him because of something set up way back when. So yeah, I'm wondering if maybe that kind of played into, but I don't know.
I mean, there's stuff I loved in the house. Like I loved the sandworm. I love when they do a big creature effect in a house. And I think it was a fun house. Yep. And I think I would love it if there was always a fun house. Yep. Like, because I get scared if somebody just pops out. And so I'm like, I still get scared in the house. I'm not scared. It's just one of those, I wanted more of like, not I wanted more, but like, I love the scene when you're in the attic. I love that aesthetic right there. So I feel like it just kind of ends. I feel like it ends in a little bit of a weird place. That's all.
It's not a balanced house at all. I will say that. You walk in and you had Beetlejuice up on his tower. When he was on his tower, he'd be up there, and then after that, like you walk through basically just blank hallways for pretty much the start of the entire house. Like you have Juno that was there with the smoke coming out of her throat and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so like you had that in a section.
The flat guy.
Oh, yeah, and you had the flat guy, but it was a lot of just walking through hallways. And even like when you're walking through the attic, you have that beautiful model there, but and there was the one cubby for a character there that I feel like, the ghost. So like it was still a little bare, but then like even if your timing was bad going through a lot of the scenes where Beetlejuice was, you were just walking through bare sets, and a lot of them, and that was an issue that I did have with the houses. There was a lot of bare moments, but it ended up on my list at number 4 because I had a pretty epic run through of it where I hit every single character that was actually in the house. And I was like, okay, it was like last year when we got to do it, like the second time that you and I went through with Kylie, where we hit every single one perfectly. And I had the same one this year where I hit every single thing. And I was like, oh, it's not a scary house, but this is awesome. Like when you really have that perfect timing, it was enough to elevate it for me. Whereas my number 6 was Netflix's The Haunting of Hill House, which was number 1 on my hype list, but so it's kind of funny that both of both of our
Yeah.
number ones on the hype ended up at the same spot in there. Hill House, I think Ryno and I nailed it perfectly as we were talking about this offline. It's still one of my favorite shows of all time, but as a house representing the show and telling the story, it did not do a good job. They had all the scenes that you would expect them to have, minus I would have liked, I mean, it took place in the house, so they had to keep it to that. Cause like, I would have loved to have a walk through the funeral parlor. That would have been cool, but taking place in the house, it had all the moments you would expect to see inside the house. It was just, overall, it just kind of came down to an execution. Like the tall man, I shouldn't be the same size, if not taller than him. And that was always the case with the first one.
He was the first one, maybe, but the other ones were tall.
The ones on the stilts were tall, but the first one wasn't. And then after that, I don't know. Like the bent neck lady, her appearances were always very underwhelming. Walking in the basement, that always felt underwhelming to me. Walking through the hallways where you had the bent neck lady that would appear randomly, but not all the time. I didn't see her up in that first black hallway until my third time through the house, just because of how timing worked out. And because I remember after we left the house, I think you were like, you didn't even look up in that hallway. I'm like, I constantly look all over the place. There was nothing up above me. So, it's, I just, and then overall, like you get to the end of the house and it's like, okay, we have to throw in all of these ghosts that are in the last episode and we'll mash it up all together, but it doesn't flow well. So while it brought to life one of my favorite shows, I think it was great as a snapshot of what you could expect from the show, but I wanted the story to be told a little bit better. And it wasn't for me. It was a montage and I wanted the direct retelling. And so that's more on me. Everyone I know loved this house, and raved about it.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
Because I started the journey not having seen the show, and then I watched the show, and that was a fun experience for me. So, then being able to I basically from when I started the show to when I finished the show, I didn't go through the house again. So then going through and being like, oh yeah, now I know what this is and that is, and oh look, there's that girl, and so I thought that was fun, and ultimately I thought it was a great haunted house where it was literally a haunted house. So I just was scared. I do feel like the very end of the house falls a little short in terms of like I said, I wish it had been all of a sudden it was 10 ghosts trying to scare you at once and you were just get out, how they ended the Michael Myers house years ago where it was all the mirrors, so there was a ton of Michael Myers everywhere. I would have liked something more akin to that, where it was because that's kind of the last shot of the show was like that.
And whereas the best haunted house that I could ever think of was when we did the one at Not Scary Farm, where we carried around the flashlights and you would go through and your flashlight would just start to flicker and go off. That was a haunted house.
That was a haunted house.
Yeah, that was.
There was a haunted house.
Number 5.
So my number 5 is Scary. Welcome to Scary. Which is surprising because then that after the first night of the event, it was the very bottom of the list for me. And now I think it was actually it was kind of I felt like the beginning of the event, that house just always felt empty. There wasn't really a lot going on. It was whatever. But then it just got scarier and scarier and scarier. And I had some really great walkthroughs and very memorable moments in that house with friends and stuff like that. It was so much fun. And I don't like mishmash houses. I like the story to be a little more coherent, because that's the hard part about this house, that if you're not familiar with any of the lore, it doesn't really make any sense at all, where you're going and what you're walking through. And so I do have a little bit of with that, but I thought the HR blood and gut stuff from there to the end of the house was top notch. And I don't, so I have it at my number 5 because I really enjoyed going through it a lot by the end of the event.
I will say, shockingly, it ended up very high on my list, and I will get to that when I get to it there. My number 5 was Puppet Theater Captive Audience, and this was truly an awesome house. I wish I could put it higher. I just don't think I care about puppets. So a lot of it was like, I liked the design. I liked going through the closet, seeing the big dilapidated theater, performers on a second level, which anytime you add that in, like, excellent stuff. But overall, like, I would leave the house and I felt like I was at the end of The Graduate every single time. Like, I'd walk out smiling and then I would just suddenly go back to that somber state of like, yeah, do I want to do that again right now? No. But in the rush, I enjoyed it. But then afterwards, it's like, it never gelled with me fully. But yeah, that one, I had to put it up high because I think this house was very consistent in its delivery of scares. But this one for me was an aesthetic thing. It just, I didn't necessarily care for the design of it, but the scares were great. Scares were really good in it.
Interesting. Okay.
Number 4 for you.
Halloween Horror Nights icons captured. I like I think even if you don't know anything necessarily about the history of Halloween Horror Nights or who these icons are or whatever, because I don't know a lot of them. Basically, I know them because of that scare zone we had a couple years ago. And obviously I know Jack because he's been an icon since I've been going, and Chance. And it was cool to like walk through this history, but it was also like you go through this kind of hellish landscape, but then they all got their own kind of areas that I thought were really good. Like I loved the Usher like area. Mm-hmm. I thought his whole part where he like is at the candy counter and everything, that was really cool. And the caretaker was good, and the storyteller, like I thought they were all great. And then I love the culmination where you come down that hallway where they're all there. And again, like you said, they're on different levels. Mm-hmm. So it's like we're in this lantern with different levels. And I loved the idea that it changed every night, or not every night. It changed throughout the night who was on the throne. But were you with me when the Jack pointed at me? It was Jack. Yeah. He pointed at me and then went, yeah, and did the chicken thing. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah. So I thought that was a great anniversary house. Really good.
I will say for me, that I struggled to place it on my list, but my number 4 was I'll get to my thoughts on icons in a second. My number 4 was Beetlejuice. I've already shared enough about that, and then I'll go into my number 3, because my number 3, which is where I'm shocked, because on that first night, besides Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the only house that we said that we did not care for was Welcome to Scary. And I had the last 2 weeks of the event, that house excelled. Not to the point that it put it above my numbers 2 and 1, which at this point you can do the math on what those would be. But Welcome to Scary just it hit completely. I had my final walkthrough of the house that I made my final walkthrough ever because of how good it was. I went through close to the end of the night and I hit every single performer that was in there. And not only that, there was other people obviously in the house, but there was no one in front of me and no one behind me, like at any point during it. So I had this house to myself. I was the only person they could scare to. So they were just waiting for me to come. And there was 3 or 4 times during that house that I was genuinely terrified just because of how good it was. And like, I was so used to seeing the meaty meats out front with the chainsaw kind of hiding behind the sign as you were going in. And I finally got to actually see him in his actual section. Like, you would walk into the butcher shop and there was always the plastic on your left, and I never saw him any of the times through until that final time. And like, every single scare was there. HR Blood and Guts, it all worked. And that one run through the house, I had good ones leading up to it, but that one was the absolute perfect walkthrough. It probably, I would almost argue it was probably the best walkthrough I had of any single house throughout the entire year, where it just hit. There was only one other one that probably came just as close and on the same level. And Welcome to Scary. It grew 3 sizes in my heart over this event.
It was an underdog house, It started at kind of that lower thing, and I feel like they gave it their all, and it was good. it was good. Yeah. So, my number three. So yeah, 3 is Hill House, and again, it was just because of, like I said, going through it, I thought it was very accessible for somebody who hadn't seen the show.
Yeah.
And I was concerned that I would be really lost in terms of it, but I thought it was good with like the scares that they provided. I do not like people on stilts, and there was that one night where like the guy came out, the tall man, and I hadn't seen him before, and he like blocked the entry. Like I couldn't keep going, and so but then he had to be like this way, and so like I got like trapped by him before. So I was like, I feel like I had some good walkthroughs, good scares, and then ultimately I did really enjoy the show too afterwards. So but it's like what you said. It is kind of just, you're in the house. It's not really a sequential telling of the show or anything like that. And yeah, so that was my number 3. My number 2 was puppet theater, captive audience. But I was a theater, I did theater basically up until I moved to Florida and stuff like that. And so I loved that aesthetic of it being like in a theater that has collapsed and people stayed. I don't know why it's necessarily called puppets, like, because the only part that had puppets was that one hallway, unless they were all supposed to be puppets, because I thought they were just like the stage people.
So from the inside scoop, I don't want to even call it that way. I was very confused about this as well too, but when we went on one night with my wife and one of her friends, and they explained the story a little bit more to me, because I thought I understood the story is that, the theater obviously was like it completely fell apart, and it was the puppets were, they
from an earthquake.
Yeah. And the puppets were coming, they ended up inhabiting the theater, but apparently from what they were told when they got a little bit of a sneak inside the house, and maybe it's what people heard on the Unmasking the Horror Tours, maybe what we even heard during the media night, and maybe I just missed it, but apparently it was that all the bodies of all the performers inside during the earthquake, they were all left in there, and they're all dead and just rotting. And so new humans came in and made puppets they were making puppets out of the dead bodies. But I never quite got that from that.
I didn't get that part, but I did know the performers had died in the house. I remember them saying that. So that's why I just assumed all those people were the dead performers.
Like zombies.
I didn't realize they were supposed to be like human puppets. Yeah, essentially.
So I do a little bit confusing on that.
But I do think it had some of my favorite types of like there was that one scene with the mirror where you think it's a mirror, but it's not a mirror because it's literally they've just recreated the scene twice, and the guy would come all the way. So everybody who was like, "Oh, the plastic sheets aren't scary. They're not going to come out at you." And I was like, "Yeah, well, you haven't walked through this part of a house yet." Because that wasn't true for all the houses, And so and then the wardrobe part, it was so tight in there. I was like, "Oh, nobody will come out of the wardrobe right now." And of course somebody pops out of the freaking wardrobe. And I thought in terms of it, like the story is you're like moving through. I really enjoyed it. And I thought it had some really good scares. That's why it kind of went up my list there. But I understand why it would be lower, but
Yeah, no, I think it just comes down to what you like and enjoy out of a house. And so for my number 2 and 1, I'm going to combine them together because basically it's not even, I feel like number 3, it was definitely Welcome to Scary. And then for me, ultimately, I had a tie for number 1, but I'll put 1 just a little bit lower for the sake of this. In that, I would put HHN Icons Captured at number 2, and then obviously that leaves number 1, Wicked Growth, Realm of the Pumpkin. Both of these houses, they were the only 2 that I never had a single walkthrough where I was disappointed. Every single time, both of these houses brought their A game, and I think specifically for Icons, I think they had to. There wasn't really a lot of room to leave the characters out of it, or it would have felt very strange. So I think that's what I like, the consistency of, the caretaker was always there when you first entered the house, and Chance was on your left and Jack was on your right. And then, moving beyond there, then you're at Lady Luck. And then with that, it was kind of, maybe you see Lady Luck once, maybe you see her twice, but she's there. The director, he was always in his spot twice with his camera flashing the lights on you. And then moving from where you're with the director, and then you move into the theater, like a beautiful, beautiful transition going through the screen. The amount of times that the usher terrified me because he was swinging his flashlight and hitting the person in the seat right at the same time I was walking through always got me. And then behind the popcorn counter with the smells. And the only part of that house that I ever felt like was kind of a letdown was the storyteller section was always a little off for me. There were points where I'd be like, okay, I didn't see the storyteller in her human form for a long time, but I'd always see the transformation version of storyteller. So that was a little wobbly there, but I feel like it literally gave, if you went through that house to see the icons and you still don't understand them at their core, like who they are, then I don't know what you were paying attention to, or you were just so terrified that you didn't get it. Like this was a love letter to the icons. And, it's something that I like about the event. I think now at this point, knowing that every 5 years we'll get some icon love, and it's something to look forward to. So it really stuck with me. And Jack has been like, for the limited years that I've gone, I don't know, there's something special with Jack, and then like us getting to do the interview with him this year, something about that just like all sticks with me better. But not to be outdone by it, Wicked Growth, Realm of the Pumpkin, the House of the Year. And I mean, I don't know who wouldn't put this house at number one. It was Halloween encapsulated. In 2019, I feel like Graveyard Games was that spooky cemetery side of Halloween. And this, for me, I feel like hit home with at least like Ryno and I, because, are up in the Northeast, your aesthetic, and in the Midwest to an extent, but your aesthetic for Halloween is, it is fall. It's farms and pumpkins and the pumpkin patch. And this was literally it. This was like your ideal version of an overrun pumpkin patch, kind of like brought to life in a way. So it had the sense, it had the scares were there, it had witches, it had the pumpkin lord, like it had everything.
It had
everything.
It had like great effects too. It had like the part where you're going over the bridge, where it's like holes in the bridge and you're looking down at the water, and like the scares where it was like the one guy, and then someone from above
every single time got
at
me.
You.
Every time.
And you have to be like, you have to duck to get under him, because he's like, I don't care, I'm going to hit you right in the face.
Yeah.
Like if you don't, like, and I was like, it was bold, and I loved the smell. I loved the pumpkin lord when he would spit on you at the end too. If you were one of those lucky few people or whatever, that they'd had that effect in there. And just it's like what you said. It felt like a creepy folklore, like a walk through a folklore tour, or, thing about Halloween. Like it was like the same reason why we love Trick or Treat. It was like, but it was like this purity to it, where I was just like, it's so good.
Yeah, I honestly, it's like if you took Trick or Treat, Graveyard Games, and Realm of the Pumpkin, and you like mash them all together, like the only thing I feel like you're missing, even though you would disagree with me on this, if you had a great haunted house, not Hill House, but a better one, an even better one, those four together are like the definition of Halloween to me. Those would have hit every single aspect that is in my ideal Halloween that I think about as I'm sitting down roasting in Florida, thinking like, if I was up north, we'd have the pumpkin patch and the kind of scary farm, and then the haunted house that sits on it, and the trick-or-treating that's involved, and then stay away from the cemetery at night. And almost it's like take all these aspects of Hocus Pocus and kind of put them also in real life in different sections. This house was incredible. Absolutely incredible. I will never forget it. I can say that much. It will always hold a fond place in my heart. It was like the one thing that everyone that we always went with every single time we could agree. Like, well, what do we do next? Let's just go to Pumpkin. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Pumpkin. You can't turn down Pumpkin.
Yeah.
You can't turn it down.
I'd be like, you start the night with it, you end the night with it. You do it as many times as you could do. It was one of those houses where it was like, I don't care how many times I walked through it, I still don't feel like I went through it enough, because I was just like, and I loved sharing the experience of walking through it with other people. Like I also grew up in Carver, Massachusetts, and the whole signage everywhere in there is it's Carver Farms, because it takes place on I believe it was the man's name was Carver, so I don't think it took place in Carver, but it made me feel like, well, I like, I have, because we did the media thing, I have a little shot of the sign that says Carver's, and I was like, I sent it to my mom and I was like, oh, can you believe that the best house this year takes place in Carver?
Yeah. And
so I was like, I don't know. It's one of those houses where I was just like, yeah, more of this, like more of these, like, I don't know.
Yep. Just fantastic. And I think it says a lot. Like, if you paid attention to our list, in your situation, of the top four, 3 of your top 4 were original houses. And in my list, of the top 4, 3 of the 4 were specifically, my top 3 were all original houses. Nothing against intellectual property. And I feel like we end up with this conversation every year. It's just original houses. They are killing it. They are absolutely killing it. It was a spectacular year. I cannot wait for the event next year. I can't wait to see how it evolves. But we're down the street, and this is not a knock on Disney, but we're down the street. They were doing still an abbreviated version of their event. They cost a lot of money. It was nice to have Universal like pretty much back to normal for Halloween.
For the amount of a ticket for one night to that abbreviated Halloween event, you could have had a frequent fear pass to this event, and you could have gone how many times? The product that you are receiving for the amount of money that you are giving is wildly different at the 2 parks. Like, again, it's not a knock, but there is no Universal Orlando is the premier Halloween event for a reason, and it is still a value for what I still think I would use that. I think it's the most value of any theme park experience I think that you can get is investing in that ticket, to be honest with you.
Here.
Because you can still ride the rides. We don't ride the rides. Nope. And you can ride most of the rides.
I did. In all the years that I've gone, I think I've maybe ridden rides twice. This year, it was y'all were in line for case files and going through the house, and I didn't know what to do. And I was like, I don't want a beer right now, not this current second. So I went and rode Transformers just because it had a 5-minute wait. It's like, why not? I haven't ridden Transformers in a while. So yeah, we don't even take advantage of that. Something that many people do. So yeah, that's it. That's our final wrap up on Halloween Horror Nights. It was a great year and cannot wait for next year. But I mean, we had to bring the show to an end. This was a supersized show. I don't think people expected.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, we had a lot to say. I mean, and that's the thing. Typically we could have made this a last episode, but I didn't want to make an episode in November that is solely just about Halloween Horror Nights. So I wanted to blend it with something else, but we always have a lot to say with it. So we'll have to see what we come up with for next week's episode, though, because I have nothing. So we might have to go do a dining review or something. That's the only thing that I can think of. But anyways, in the meantime, I wanted to say thank you to everyone so much out there for listening and watching this. Ryno, thank you for being a part.
Thank you. I'm wearing my jacket. Oh,
I will not lie. I'm probably going to put mine on because it's a chilly day here in Central Florida today. So I probably will wear mine as well too. But I really hope that everyone out there enjoyed this episode. And if you did, of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and make sure that you are leaving comments, questions, and video suggestions in the comments section below. If you're listening to this, make sure you're subscribed to the DIS Unplugged Universal Edition wherever you listen to podcasts. If it's through Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review. That would help us a lot. And if you want to support us even more, book your Universal Orlando vacation through Dreams Unlimited Travel. Not just helps the company, but it helps us keep the show actually going. So we don't have to go on any more extended hiatuses without this show. So you can get a free no obligation quote at dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. But that's it for me this week, as well as Ryno. Goodbye, Ryno. Goodbye. We'll see you again real soon for another episode of the DIS Unplugged Universal Edition. But remember, we still haven't changed the name.